Alright guys, I promised you a special guest. I wasn't going to lie to you. Here he is in the flesh. The president of Back 40 Beer Company, Mr. Jason Wilson himself. Jason, how's it going, man?
Good, man. Cheers.
Cheers,
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So where are we at right now exactly?
This is the grain room. This is the beginning of the process for us. We start out, we brew on a 30-barrel brew house. So we start out with about 2,500 pounds of grain, fresh malted barley.
Okay.
In any given recipe, we're going to use 4 or 5 different types of malted barley. So it's not just one malted barley. That's the reason you see some different bags from some different suppliers. We get grains from Canada. We get grains from Chile. We get grains from Argentina. We get grains from Germany, you know, all over the country, and then obviously in the United States. Most of our base malts come from the Midwest. A lot of the specialty malts that you see, some chocolate malts, crystal malts, you know, some of the more specialty malts come from all over the world. So on any given recipe, you may see 5 or 6 different types of specialty malts. So.
Sweet, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys, you hear it. That's the starting process. We're going to go into the grain room.
Yeah,
next.
so once, you know, this is basically for us, this is about 2,200 pounds of malted barley that comes in 50-pound bags. So that's one batch of beer for us, depending on the beer style. So this is our grain room. It's a relatively clean room for obvious reasons. This is the grain mill. Basically what's happening here is the malted barley, the kernels of malted barley that you can see here are being passed through this mill and crushed open. And what we're doing there, and the reason that we're crushing them open is to get to this, the dust that you see here. This is the good stuff. So under an intense heat, this starchy, powdery substance is actually going to convert into, or break down into simple sugars, or what some people refer to in our industry as fermentable sugars. That is our food source. You know, so just like if you're having vodka, the starch source in vodka is coming from potatoes. If you're having a glass of sake, the starch source is rice. You know, corn whiskey, obviously, you're getting it from corn mash. For us and for most craft brewers, that base starch is malted barley. So 2,500 pounds goes through this machine here in about 15 minutes. What you see here, this long tube that's connected, is basically a big conveyor that as that grain gets crushed and dropped out of the bottom of that machine, there's a huge auger inside here that's pulling all that grain up and out to the other side of this wall here where our grain silo is based right beside the brew house.
Sweet, awesome. Well, I kind of had a segment that I want to do between the tour. It's 5 questions with JBear. First question I'm going to ask you, how important was it to you personally to bring the brewery here to Gadsden, Alabama?
Well, you know, I'm from Gadsden, so I mean, I was born and raised here and left and went and did my stint in corporate America, and you know, so when the decision was made to start a microbrewery, obviously my first choice was to come back to Gadsden. You know, one of the great things about what we do is we bottle and sell our beer all over the state of Alabama, so our home location per se wasn't necessarily that important. So knowing that, why not bring it back to Gadsden? Why not create some jobs in your hometown? And really, you know, that's the core of craft beer. That's what we do. We're a community business, and you really have to go back to pre-prohibition days to understand the role of brewers in the community. You know, for years and years prior to prohibition, craft brewers were a Main Street business. They were just as significant as a butcher or a seamstress or a blacksmith or anything else. You would see them on every Main Street in America. And then, you know, when Prohibition happened, obviously, all these great artisans had to go find other careers. So the idea of bringing brewing of craft beers back to Main Street really resonated with me, and where better to start than one block off of Broad Street in my hometown, you know, and I think it speaks volumes to what craft beer is really about.
Yeah, as I say, it's gotta be pretty cool to lift up a bottle and says, you know, home brewed in Gadsden.
It's gotta be a good feeling. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, like I said, we're excited to be a part of the community, you know, to be a part of a business community, and that means something. And it's unfortunate, but in a lot of industries that doesn't mean anything. And you know, Gadsden's probably being a small town, and you know, in the Rust Belt, basically,
that's true.
Of the old steel industry here in the South. You know, we are a prime example of what can happen to a beautiful community when it gets chewed up and spit out by big industry. So who better to come in and heal those wounds and start from scratch than good old-fashioned small business.
Sweet. Awesome.
So yeah, it was really important.
Oh man, that's awesome. Cool, man. I guess we just continue on.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So we go from the grain room to see what happens next.
Sure. Well, once the grain's crushed here, it gets sent out through that pipe there over into our grain silo. That's this way.
Okay, awesome.
1 and a 2 and 3. Well, I guess my daddy had brought me up down along the road in a pickup truck.
All right, so you'll notice coming out of that wall over there is the pipe that we left on the other side of the wall. That's conveying all that grain that we just crushed in our grain mill right over into the top of this silo. We're going to dump our grains down into this silo. As you can see in the bottom, in that clear boot that's on the bottom, we've just crushed in a fresh batch of 2,500 pounds of malted barley that's ready to go into the mash tun.
Awesome. Cool. I guess the next question I have for you, you know, the brewery's open, everything, tap room's going, everything's going great. What were some of the trials and tribulations of getting this open here?
Oh man, they're ongoing every day. But you know, the important thing is when you're doing something that you love and that you're passionate about and that you care about, you don't mind the trials and tribulations. You know, you don't mind the 12-hour days and everything that goes along with it. So, you know, but you can take that as far as you possibly want to take it. You know, from our very first steps, getting licensing and getting approval, to the legislative battles that we've had as an industry as a whole here in Alabama, you know, from updating the ABV laws so that we could brew some more traditional craft beers that were previously prohibited in the state, to the Brewery Modernization Act that we got passed last year in the state of Alabama, which allowed us to open our tasting room and tap room and really let people into the community and see, or into the brewery and see what we do and why we do it and why we're so passionate about what we do. So, I mean, from inspectors to licensing to background checks, FBI background checks, ABI background checks, the whole 9 yards. You know, it's been definitely a labor of love, but it's
the payoff.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
I was going to say, it's one vote away. How do you feel about the gourmet beer law may possibly come into effect now? That's huge.
You know, I'm cautiously optimistic. We've got a lot done on that, but we've been to this point before with a piece of legislation only to have it kind of not make that that last push. But you know, I was in Montgomery last week.
Yeah, I heard you kick some major butt.
I don't know about that. But you know, I was in Montgomery last week for some committee hearings and meetings on the subject, and I think we did a lot to educate members of the legislature, members of the Congress about what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing, and what the impact on the state of Alabama is going to be long term, and what we can do to impact the job market here in the state of Alabama if they continue to allow us to have these things that let us really promote our business the way we want to do it. So yeah, there's a lot of, it's a really exciting time to be in the beer business in Alabama right now. Yeah.
Sweet. So we've gone from the grain room, we've gone to this point right here.
Yeah.
What's the very next step we take here in the brewery?
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is basically repeat that process that you just saw, but now it's going to go from the bottom of this grain silo up and over and into our mash tun. Okay. So this 2-vessel system you see right here is our brew house. This is a 30-barrel brew house.
Right.
Here you can see the mash tun. This is where we're going to mash in those 2,000 plus pounds of grain. You'll notice that the screen on the bottom of this is a false bottom. It's a screen bottom so that we can pull the liquid out of the mash once we've completed the mash process and leaving the spent grains in.
Okay.
So during the mash in process, you're going to see those rake arms inside there turning constantly.
Right.
Kind of stirring and keeping that mash bed loose. And as we draw the liquid off the bottom, that mash bed's going to compact down. Once the mash in process is over with, when we're ready to extract our spent grains, we're going to open this vessel right here, close this door, and then we're going to pump out all 2,000 pounds of that grain into large bulk bags.
Right.
We have a local cattle farmer that backs in to the loading docks right over there. Every afternoon, we load him up with about 2,000 pounds of spent grain, and he goes and feeds about 50 head of cattle, and we get a nice slaughter at the end of the year. So it works out good.
Kind of a nice little. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
We give some of our spent grains to a local chicken farmer. We get eggs and poultry from him. We give some of it to a local cattle farmer, so we get all our beef from them, and then we give some of it to a local organic farm, so we get all of our vegetables.
So it's a constantly just sharing all.
Well, and that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah,
being able to utilize every single last drop of the brew house.
Let's have to do some happy cows and chickens.
Yeah, for now.
For now. For now.
Insert evil laugh.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, once the mashing process is over, we're going to go over to the next tank.
All right.
This is our brew kettle.
Okay.
So here's our mash tun. Here's our control panel. You can get a great shot of the entire brew house right here. You're going to see every individual tank, every pump, every controllable speed that we have on here. Here's our wort kettle. This is the brew kettle behind you. This is where we boil the beer, add our hops and any spices or flavoring, depending on some seasonals. For example, with Truck Stop Honey, this is where we add the honey.
Right.
So that's local wildflower honey from right here in Alabama. Once we're through in the brew kettle here, we can monitor the temperature. We can control all the steam that are coming into these tanks. This is what's called a jacketed tank. So essentially you've got a tank inside of a tank. So this cavity right here that you see all the way around the vessel, that's what we pump with steam, so that we can heat up 1,000 gallons at a time. For anybody who's ever cooked noodles on their home stove, you know how long it can take to hook up a pot or bring a pot of water to boil.
Right.
Well, that's why we use steam. You know, the thought of trying to bring something like this up to a boil from a direct fire system on the bottom, it's very inefficient. So the steam is our friend in this case. That's all fired by a steam-fired boiler that's back over behind those doors there. Once the beer's through here, we're going to take it to one of these 5 fermentation vessels. If you'll notice, each one of these vessels has a temperature reading on it right now based on the liquid that's inside that fermentation vessel. I can adjust the temperature of each one of these vessels at the touch of a button. This is all tied in electronically to our glycol chilling system. Just like this tank is jacketed and we pump steam into it, those tanks are jacketed and we're pumping chilled water through the outside shell to lower the temperature of the beer. So as beer's fermenting and it tends to rise in temperature, we allow, based on these settings, it automatically controls a valve that'll allow chilled water to go inside the jackets of those tanks and bring that beer back down to temperature. So this particular setup right here runs 24/7, 365. It's constantly monitoring and controlling the temperature of all the beers. And then once it's out of there, we're going to transfer it into a bright beer tank similar to this one. That's the squatted tank that you see over there. That's going to literally be the last stop for the beer in our warehouse before it goes to packaging. So once we've carbonated the beer inside the bright beer tank, it's ready to go to the bottling line or the kegging lines. So there's the view from the brew house.
I guess my next question for you is, there are a lot of breweries out there. What were some of the breweries that inspired you over the years to kind of do what it is that you're doing now?
Well, I was lucky enough to get to travel a lot in college, and it was something that I was really passionate about, and it just kind of snuck up on me. So back in 2000, 2001, spent some time in Crested Butte, Colorado. My brother was a ski instructor out there, so I got a chance to hang out there more probably than most people do, and I got to be really well acquainted with the local brew pub there in Crested Butte, and from there it turned into a passion like it has for so many other people, you know, where every town you go to, you end up looking for the local brew pub or the local microbrewery, or you're at least going to ask what sort of local beers that the pub has on tap that you walk into. Well, for me, it turned into just that, to where every town that I went to, I was taking the tour, I was bringing a bottle of, or a 22 or something home with me, you know, to commemorate the trip. And over the course of 8 or 10 years, you know, I've toured a little over 150 microbreweries in the United States, so my inspiration comes from a lot of different places. When I'm dreaming about bottling lines and packaging lines, I get my inspiration from places like Sweetwater, places like New Belgium, you know, Sierra Nevada. Those guys have dream machines. You know, when when I'm inspired more on the marketing and advertising side of things, you know, you look at companies like Terrapin, you look at companies like NOLA down in New Orleans, CR City, who do a lot of fun stuff. Shorts Brewery obviously is a really good example of how to do it right. You know, so we have a great relationship with a lot of breweries. Yazoo up in Nashville, Linus Halls, great guy. They do amazing stuff up there. So we've been fortunate enough, because of the community and the industry that we work in, to be able to develop great relationships with these other brewers and really share our playbooks back and forth, and anything that I can share with those guys and anything they can share with us. We work together on suppliers and pricings, you know, and all that stuff, just to kind of keep the information flowing in our industry. And there's very few industries out there that can say that.
I was about to say, it's really cool to see how open source craft beer seems to be, of helping one another out and getting to that point of where you want to go or what you want to do with your company.
No doubt.
Man, like the other day, you know, last weekend or so ago, you guys had Front Porch Revival. And for those of you at home that don't know what Front Porch Revival was, Front Porch Revival is a thing that's been started to kind of highlight all the great food, beer, the music, the art, everything that kind of comes from the great state of Alabama. And I don't know about you, but me personally, as I was kind of walking around, if you saw my blurb that I posted on the show, it made me really happy to see that many people walking around with craft beer in their hand, man.
And not just the number of people, but the different demographics that are represented there. You know, that's the big fight that we have in front of us here in Alabama, is educating people on not just craft beer as an option for your beverage, but as a member of the community, as a cultural influence on Alabama, and how primed this state already is to appreciate a good artisan craft like brewing beer. So it was encouraging to see, you know, almost 1,000 people from all walks of life out here for an event that was solely focused on the Alabama cultural scene.
Feel alright in city life. Couldn't leave no city life, it just ain't right. I was born out west in Cheyenne while my mom and pa was rambling around, and I'm around the too, but I'm country blind.
Here we have a rather large and very impressive in my eyes. This is my favorite piece of equipment in this entire building. This is our gas-fired steam boiler. So what you have here is essentially a gas-fired flamethrower that shoots a 12-foot long flame inside this contraption.
That is incredible.
This boiler is heating water up to the temperature of steam, where it converts to a gas. Once it converts to a gas, obviously it rises. It comes out this manifold, is pumped all the way back over into the brew house, which is how we fire the brew house and how we heat the kettle.
Really? Oh man, this is
so
cool.
Yeah, and then once the The cool thing is, once the steam goes into the kettle, into the cavity there of the kettle, once it loses temperature and converts back into a liquid, it's going to be forced out by the new steam coming in, travel back down that smaller pipe that you see underneath the large one, and feed the boiler back again with hot water. So instead of us having to heat water continuously up to the temperature of steam from room temperature, we're simply having to reheat it from an already warm temperature, almost steam, back up to steam. So it's about 90% more efficient in the process than if you were using just ambient water the entire time.
Okay.
Here you see our first addition of 30-barrel fermenters. We got these new when we got our brew house in. That was the first round of tanks, and shortly after that, approximately 30 days after that, we ordered another round of tanks. And what you'll see up there at the top are the stub outs for where our future tanks are coming. They'll be here in the next 5 or 6 weeks or so.
Okay.
We'll fill in all of this row, and it'll allow us to stretch into, we just rolled out statewide in Mississippi, so this is going to be the tank capacity that allows us to service Mississippi, Florida, and Georgia all in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're in the process of in 2012 we'll launch 2 new beers and roll out in 3 new states. So we've got a lot going on around here.
That is awesome, man. Sweet.
Token beard guy, get a shot.
Trying to hide.
It's our keg washer right here. This is where we wash and clean all the kegs prior to filling. Here you see our bright beer tank. This is where all the beer goes to post-filtration. Okay. Once we've filtered it out of that fermenter there, when it's set for 2 weeks or so, we filter it out, bring it into here. This is where we carbonate it through a carb stone. It's going to sit here for a couple of days and carbonate. Once it's carbonated, it's going to run through the bottling line that you see behind you. For those in the beer world, you're very familiar with this. This is a 6-head Maheen manufacturing bottle filler. Okay. It's filling 6 bottles at a time. It's manually fed from this collection table right here. Right. From that point on, it's fully automated. It fills the bottles, it caps the bottles, it plants the bottles on this conveyor system here. This is our pressure sensitive labeler. You're going to see the bottles come down. They'll receive a label right here, come into this collection table, where our second man of this operation is here to pack the bottles into 6-packs, tape them, put them on a pallet, and out the door. We try not to have more than 24 hours worth of beer here at any given time. Okay. And luckily, because of the state of the craft beer world right now, we're lucky enough to hit those metrics pretty regularly. In fact, most of the time we're weeks behind on shipments, much less having some around. So once it's going through the packaging line, the kegging, and the bottling station, we're going to bring it over here to the walk-in cooler, as I said, for maybe a day or so. Right. And it'll be ready to ship out to our wholesalers all over the state and in Mississippi. So as you can see, we try to keep these warehouses to a minimum. We don't want anything in here. We got a big cookout coming up, so this is actually all of our veggie list.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So what you see here is a wall of hops. These are all the hops that we keep in inventory at any given time. Some of those hops are more rare than others. Some of them are readily available. We contract all of our hops. A lot of people don't realize that hops are a commodity just like anything else. So we sign contracts years in advance for the crops that we use to brew our beers with. So, so these hops that you see here were probably actually grown last year. We had contracted those hops, so at the end of the year, once they were ready, we were able to get a bulk shipment of them. That way we protect ourselves and keep inventory in-house at all times.
I guess my next question for you, You guys have a lot, like you have the Naked Pig Ale, you have the Truck Stop Honey Brown, award-winning Truck Stop Honey Brown. You have now the Freckle Belly IPA and the Kudzu Porter. I guess my question is, where did all these fun, interesting names come from for your beers?
Well, it really goes back, I guess, to the whole idea of the back 40. You know, people within the South understand back 40 a lot, but as you get further outside the South, the term isn't as familiar. You know, back 40 is an old agricultural reference to the 40 acres furthest from the barn, the acreage that's hardest to maintain, hardest to irrigate, where the tractors go to die. You know, so for years and years, nobody ever bothered plowing the back 40 and tending to it because it was such a hassle. It wasn't a very efficient operation. Well, you know, as we've grown and evolved and developed technologically and you know, mentally and everything else, it became more feasible to plow the back 40 and to farm it. And the ironic thing about the back 40 is, if you ever do plow it, if you ever do move those old tractors off and actually run some irrigation out there, it's great soil, it's new ground, so it produces a tremendous yield. Well, the same thing's true for craft beer in the South, and specifically in Alabama. You know, we were the back 40 of the craft beer world. Nobody bothered coming here, nobody bothered selling their beer or distributing their beer here unless they were within a close vicinity. You know, so the entire concept of craft beer has been slow to arrive here in the South, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't fit so well with what Southerners have done all their life. You know, Southerners have supported local businesses their whole life. You want to talk about terms like sustainable and local and farm to fork. You know, all of those initiatives are things that originated from the Southern way of life. You know, Southerners have been supporting local businesses their whole life. They've been, you know, you want to talk about sustainable. How about if you don't take care of your farm, your family starves to death next year? You know, so sustainability, all of those things that are so important to craft beer already exist and resonate from Southern culture. So it just made sense that someone eventually tried to pull those tractors off the back 40 and plow that soil and plant that ground. So, and in extension of that with our beer names, we work with a great local firm out of Athens, Alabama, and right on the town square, just like you're imagining Alabama, it's small town to be. And they do amazing work. They do stuff all over the country. They're very talented. So we started working with them 4 years ago about the whole concept of back 40 and what we wanted to promote and what we wanted it to be, and the specific thing that we wanted to shine a light on in Alabama, which is the culture here. The culture here that is a positive influence on the South, not necessarily the bruises of the past. You know, so our names are kind of an extension of that idea. You know, anything that's kind of used as a jab or a poke or a fun at Southerners, we love to take it and kind of flip it on its head and put a stamp on it and send it back out. So, you know, Naked Pig, it's an American style pale ale. The palest animal on the farm is a pig. You can't get any paler than a naked pig. So that was the first thinking. And then Truck Stop Honey, we actually started with Truck Stop Honey because the apiary, the local beekeeper that we get our honey from, is primarily known for bottling his honey in the little plastic bees that, for those of you from the South, know. If you walk into a gas station or a truck stop anywhere along the interstate in Alabama, you're going to see a few bottles of local wildflower honey sitting on the countertop. So once you understand that, you understand where the truck stop honey part came from. You know, that's primarily where he sold his honey. So we decided Truck Stop Honey was an appropriate name. But likewise, you know, if you're from Alabama, you also know what a truck stop honey is. So, same thing with Freckle Belly. You know, Freckle Belly's a fish that's native to the Cahaba River here in Alabama, and it's just a fun name. You know, when I say Freckle Belly, I have like 10 different people that pop in my head. So, so if you're from the South, you get it. You know, and then obviously Kudzu Porter. people in the South know what kudzu is.
Yeah,
so we figure take something that's not necessarily has a positive connotation and flip that. So
awesome.
I'll travel till my country home is found, and I will travel.
This is where all of our packaging materials get staged. This is where we pre-build all of our boxes for the different bottling runs we're doing. If you look here, there's some Jack Daniel's barrels. We'll do some barrel aging projects with these. Over the next couple of days, they'll get filled. They'll get put on some barrel racks and they'll lock back in the secret room where they'll sit for 6 months to a year and a half, and then they'll go out the door.
And that's the door that it goes out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, oh, we're gonna get a nice little sunset right here.
Oh, nice.
Oh man, it's like an inch behind that building. So, once the process is through, it's backing up a truck here into the parking lot and loading up the pallets, and they're out the door to make their way all around the state of Alabama and Mississippi for craft beer drinkers everywhere to enjoy.
Right, awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers, definitely. I guess I have one more question. It's a very simple question, actually. Are you guys hiring? I'm kidding. No. What would be your advice to give anybody who is wanting to get into craft brewing or just the home brewing or anything in general to kind of fuel that passion of like, you know what? I found my passion. I know what I want to do. I want to start brewing. What would be the best advice you can give somebody?
Well, for anybody who's been bitten by that bug,
right?
You know that once it hits you, it's kind of hard to shake.
Right.
You know, there's really nothing you can do to not be a part of it. But you know, I started this company still working a full-time job in corporate America, and worked it for a year and a half. We worked out a contract brewing relationship. Jamie Ray, our brewmaster, who's been brewing beer for 20 years, he's got 6 medals at the Great American Beer Festival, right. 2 medals from the World Beer Cup, and a medal from the Real Ale Festival in Chicago. So I mean, find somebody who's equally as passionate as you are and share the load. You know, you just have to dig in, start calling suppliers, figure out your business plan, no matter how small the scale is, because
right.
a lot of people don't realize on the business side, you know, a business plan isn't really that valuable when you write it. It's 3 years from now when that business plan is really going to define what you want to be as a company, right. and you'll be able to look back and tell what your intentions were along the way. So, you know, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Right.
You know, educate yourself, listen instead of talk.
Right.
You know, when you go on these brewery tours, spend a little less time at the serving counter and spend a little more time with somebody in the back that looks like they know what they're talking about.
Right.
You know, and if you're dedicated to it, if you're committed to it, it's just like, that's the great thing about America. You know, it's one of the few places in the world where hard work still pays off. So
right.
you just have to recognize that a lot of 14-hour days, it's not glamorous. A lot of shovel work, a lot of scrubbing, a lot of cleaning,
yeah.
but the end result is something that you're really proud of, and that
right.
and that you hope others can enjoy. So
right.
it's worth it in the long run.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's it. That about wraps another episode. Really quick though, gonna ask Jason, is there anything you want to plug, man?
No, man. Anything? Just it's funny. We just got a truck wrapped by Birmingham Budweiser this past week, and they emailed us and said, "Hey, design the truck wrap and you know send it back to us. This big 28-foot trailer, you know, and send it back to us. You know, make it cool and all this and you know, like I told you, we don't spend a lot of time on frou-frou advertising and
right.
marketing and you know naked women and all that stuff. So
right.
we just put it out there. Buy this beer.
Right.
That's so the
Awesome.
side of the truck just says buy this beer.
Cool.
And has a picture of all 4 of our bottles. So if there's anything I would say is, if you're not drinking one of my craft beers, drink another local craft beer, support local breweries, support local businesses, and we'll all be better off for it.
Awesome, man. We heard it from the man himself. That's it, guys. If you want to know more about Back 40, you can go to their website, back40beer.com. You can also follow them on Twitter at back40tweets. You can also like them on Facebook at facebook.com/back40beer. Tap room is open Monday through Saturday, Monday through Thursday, 5 to 7. Friday and Saturday, 3 to 8. And on Saturdays, you guys do tours, right?
Yeah, we do tours all day on Saturdays. Those are free, so come on by. Somebody's always here to show you around and let you kick the tires a little bit. So.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking time.
Dude.
Schedule. Cheers, brother. Thank you so much. From as far as I go, you can like me on Facebook, facebook.com/JBear versus craft beer. Follow me on Twitter at JB versus CB show. That's it, guys. That wraps up another episode of JBear versus craft beer. This is episode 9. This has been a really, just pinch me. Man, this has been a great episode. I really love this one. Just reaffirms why I'm so passionate about craft beer. That's it, guys. As always, drink responsibly. Cheers.